Hello everyone, and welcome to yet another insightful scholarship track session. In today's session, we will be talking about TOEFL preparation, and we have some special guests with us today who will be sharing their experience and strategies on how they prepare TOEFL on their own. Firstly, I would like to introduce you to the speakers. Our first speaker of the session is Anushka Bhave.
Hello everyone.
Anushka, yeah. So Anushka has pursued computer engineering from VIT Pune, and she has achieved a fantastic score, that is of 115 score out of total 120 marks. And our second speaker is Smith Patel,
Hey guys, hello.
who has graduated from IIT Indore and achieved an impressive score of 115 too. Both of our speakers has achieved exceptional result in the TOEFL exam, and they are here to share you with some tips and insights which they have learned throughout their journey. So now let's go into the discussion uh, on how they have prepared in their exams. So I have few questions which we will be discussing today. So first of all, speakers, could you please tell me what is TOEFL and what preparation experience would you like to share with us? Yeah.
Okay, so firstly, thank you for having me here. About TOEFL, so to start with, TOEFL is a standardized test to measure your English language ability, basically of non-native speakers who are wishing to enroll in English-speaking universities like in US, Canada, and so on and so forth. So for those who want to pursue a master's degree, TOEFL or IELTS is an application requirement which is put forth by universities in the US. And about my TOEFL experience, so like you mentioned that I scored 115 on the TOEFL. TOEFL basically has 4 sections: reading, listening, speaking, and writing, and these are of 30 marks each. So my scores in these sections were 29, 28, 28, and 30 respectively. And for my preparation, I kept around a week's time where I dedicated around 2 hours each day. And I think it also depends on the strengths and weaknesses of an individual aspirant who is going to appear for the TOEFL. And I think to begin with your preparation, you should just start with giving a full sample test, which will help you know your strengths and weaknesses.
Awesome, awesome. Next, let's discuss about the pattern and structure of the exam.
Uh, okay, so basically there are 4 sections in the exam: reading, writing, speaking, and listening. I'll be covering reading and listening, and Anushka will be covering speaking and writing. So I'll start with reading. Reading, like all section, comprises of 30 marks. So basically, the total test of 120 marks, and each section has 30 marks each. They are divided equally, and there are 3 to 4 sets in the reading section, and each set will have 10 questions. So usually there are only 3 sets in the reading section, but in case you get the extra section, you'll have 4 sets in the reading section. Reading is pretty straightforward that way. You just have to read the passages and answer your questions. The format of the questions will remain the same for every set in the reading section. There'll just be different passages and different questions, but the format will remain the same. And the total time allocated to each set of the section is 18 minutes. So if you have 3 sets in the reading section, you'll have a total of 54 minutes. An important thing to note is that the timer on the clock for the reading section is set as a whole. So it does not necessarily mean that in every set you'll just get 18 minutes. You can actually attempt a set in the first set in 16 minutes and the second set in 19 minutes. It is okay. All you have to do is ensure that the reading section as a whole is completed within 54 minutes. Now, coming to listening, there are 2 types of audio clips that have to be heard. Listening is basically you have to hear an audio clip once. You just get to hear it once. This is very important. And then you'll have to answer questions based on what you heard. So there are typically 2 types of audio clips. The first one is lectures. So in a normal TOEFL exam, in the listening section, there are about 3 to 4 lectures, some with classroom discussion, and each lecture is followed by 3 to 5 minutes. Each lecture is of 3 to 5 minutes each, and is followed by 6 questions. And the second type is conversational listening. So basically, a colloquial language between two people. So there are usually 2 to 3 conversations in the listening section, and each of them will span around 3 minutes, and there'll be 5 questions per conversation. Now I'll hand over to Anushka.
Yeah, so after the reading and listening section, there is a 10-minute break. So after the break, the speaking section begins. So speaking basically consists of 4 tasks, and it's totally timed over 17 minutes. So in speaking, you have two kinds of tasks, or rather two types I can categorize as. First is wherein they ask your personal viewpoints on some specific topic, and the second is wherein they give you a passage, or where you listen to a conversation and then you speak about that. So these are the two types, and accordingly you have to speak about that particular question. And for writing also, it's the same. So there are two essays that you have to write, and both of these essays are separately timed. So in the first essay, again, they are going to ask you about your personal opinion about some topic that has been given. And in the second one, again, there will be a passage or a conversation, and you have to write. There will be some question related to what you read or listen, and you have to write about that. So that's about the speaking and the writing session.
Great, really descriptive answer, I must say. Can you tell me, is this exam compulsory for all the countries? I mean, is it compulsory to get into university and you have to have a TOEFL score?
So at least for STEM courses, I can speak for STEM courses. All universities across the United States, most universities in the European Union and the United Kingdom accept TOEFL as a standard test for candidates' English language proficiency. So basically, to answer the question, yes, it is compulsory. It needs to be part of the application. Since coming to Indians specifically, since India is not a predominantly English-speaking country, we need to give TOEFL in order to demonstrate that we can actually understand, listen, and write in English, the language which they use to teach and educate us. So hence, it is mandatory.
Awesome, awesome. So, both of you, please do let me know the preparation strategy you used and the resources you followed to get the good score. Yeah. So, let's start with Anushka.
Okay, so I referred to the official material that TOEFL provides. So there's this official TOEFL IBT Volume 2 guide which I solved. Also, there are some YouTube channels which I particularly made use of during my preparation. There is a channel called TST Prep, and there's also one more channel called Noteful, wherein they have section wise strategies, templates, and questions to solve. So I think when you solve this and get to know about it, you can identify your weaknesses and then particularly focus on those in whatever stipulated time you have for preparation. And as long as the preparation time goes, I think I said that I studied around for 2 hours for approximately a week. But again, it depends from person to person based on how your English skills are in all of these reading, writing, speaking, and listening. And I think for Indian students who have been studying in English throughout their school and college, I think you won't require more than 10 or 15 days for your preparation.
Okay, great. Smith, can you
Uh,
answer the same question? Yeah.
so I basically spent 4 days preparing for my exam. I thought 4 days was sufficient, and I had limited preparation time. And I had a strategy in mind, and I believe this strategy will work for anyone who has decent English linguistic skills. So on day zero, which is the day prior to the 4 days preparation, I spent the entire day studying about the pattern of TOEFL and types of questions asked in the exam. I just studied what is asked. I didn't practice. I didn't do anything. I just took a grasp of what exactly is going to be there on the paper on the final day. Then the second thing I did was on the same day itself. I prepared a medium-sized word list which comprises around 300 to 400 words, which are not so common to us, which are uncommon in our daily colloquial language. And I prepared a list and I made sure that I revised them during my 4 days of practice. So on day one, I spent the entire day attempting all the questions in all the sections to get the hands-on experience on actually what are my strengths and weaknesses and which type of questions I am used to and privy to and which type of questions I'm facing difficulty. So I spent the entire first day getting to know how good I am in those types of questions for the entire topic. The second day, I gave a complete test to identify my strengths or weaknesses in a test setting and the particular type of questions. I spent the third day strengthening those type of questions where there is a higher possibility for me to make an error or where I would lose marks very, very easily. Basically, I spent the entire third day focusing on my weaker aspects. So, I mean, to give you a realistic gist, I struggled initially during speaking. I used to run out of time to think. So, I spent the entire third day just practicing speaking. And I guess that helped me a long way. And the final day, I gave the complete standard TOEFL mock test, which is provided by ETS itself. So the score you get there is approximately about the score you'll get in the final exam, since that is a paper you're attempting just before the D day, the final day. So that was my 4 day preparation strategy. And anyone who has a decent English speaking, listening, writing skill can actually use it and crack TOEFL with a stellar score.
Really amazing strategy, I must say. So, as you just mentioned, there are various sections in the paper like reading, writing, speaking, and listening. So, which section contain more weightage? Is there any difference in the marks weightage according to different sessions?
So the total marks of the exam are 120, and each section has the same weightage. That is, each section is of 30 marks each, although the time for each section differs. So yeah, they are equally important.
Okay.
Uh, I will
So,
also, yeah. So one thing I would like to add to the previous question is that there is an experimental section which is compulsory for all TOEFL aspirants. So basically, it is an extra section, but the examiner, the ETS won't tell you which section it is. So basically, it is an extra set which can fall into any of the sections: reading, speaking, listening, or writing. So you might have to write 3 essays, or you might have to attempt 4 sets of reading. But there's an experimental section, and we won't know about it. So the important thing here is you'll have to attempt every section with the same focus and the same determination as you attempt a normal mark section.
perfect, perfect.
Yeah, I'd like to add to him. So, like he said, that so some people also don't have an experimental section, but I had my experimental section in reading. So, usually in reading, you have three passages, 10 questions each for 54 minutes. But for me, it was 72 minutes and four passages. And again, like he said, you don't know which passage they will be considering. So, it's not like so you have to be equally focused on the last question, the questions of the last passage as well.
Okay, great. So, how did you prepare the specific section? What material did you follow? Yeah. Any one of
Okay.
you can go ahead. Yeah.
So basically, my main motto was, practice effectively. So I practiced questions from all 4 sections, like a normal candidate would. But besides practicing, I followed a few techniques that actually improved and bolstered my performance and efficiency in the examination. So I'll be taking each section and I'll be, sharing a tip which helped me in that particular section. So coming to reading, this was like a fundamental thing which I followed for all passages. I read the passage once, then I read all the questions pertaining to the passage, and I read the passage again. But the second time it was very slow, and I analyzed every statement and mapped it to the question. So this time I knew which statement answered which question. So it was very, very easy for me to answer all the questions, and it didn't take a lot of time as well. And I was sure that it was accurate because it was my second reading and I was very, very, very analytical about it. Coming to listening, I mean, I've been telling this to everyone, you have to take running notes. So basically, whatever you hear, you write. It doesn't have to be the entire statement. You can just pen down bullet points or pointers which actually summarize the gist of what they're talking about. So the reason behind this is it is very easy to forget. It's a 3 to 5 minute speech. You can actually forget what they're talking about in the first minute. And second, you can actually miss a statement or misinterpret it, or there is some disturbance in the test center. It can be any one of the n number of reasons. But if you have the running note right in front of you, you can answer every question without having to worry about missing anything. So this actually helps a lot in listening, and I would like to add that this strategy helped me get a 30 out of 30 in listening. Now, coming to speaking, I don't think there's a workaround to speaking. All you have to do is practice. So what I did was I called up a friend, I set up a Google Meet, and I asked him to, ask me mock speaking TOEFL questions which are available on the internet. And until he and I both felt confident about how I spoke and how I responded, I just kept practicing. And like I mentioned, this happened on day three. And writing is pretty straightforward in TOEFL. You just have to read the question clearly. And one thing which I would like to add is more than sophisticated words, using simple words and meaningful languages actually increase your score and help your essay go a long way. There are no extra marks for employing, uncommon fancy words. You just have to be simple and clear in your essay. The main point should be executed. That's it from my end.
Okay. Anushka, do you want to add something?
So I'll start with reading. So firstly, I think for reading, time management is extremely crucial. So if you have 54 minutes for three passages, I try to solve each passage within 14 to 15 minutes so that I have time left at the end to cross check questions once, because I really thought that I might do it wrong in the first go. And there are so there are different types of questions that you have in the TOEFL reading. Like, say you have inference questions, negative factual questions, or insert text questions. So some of them are easy, some are hard. So basically, the strategy is to save time on the easier questions to use it on the harder questions. Like, for example, the summary question, wherein you have to almost read the entire paragraph to just down, so to basically know the points of the summary answer. So I think that is one strategy for reading. And I think for reading, you just need to solve sample tests. So there is a website called Test Glider, which has a few free tests, section-wise tests, as well as full tests, and also the TOEFL official guide. And I think by practicing, reading is easy. For listening, I solved one or two sets just to get an idea. And like Smith said, taking running notes. So that doesn't mean you write down everything, because you don't have that much time, but you just write down the main things and focus completely on whatever the conversation is going on. So I think that will help you ace in listening. For speaking, again, I think that even though I don't find my speaking to be bad, I really found this section difficult. That was because no matter how good speaker you are, the time and the content that's expected, the time is very less to prepare or to form points, and the content that's expected, apart from the content, how candidly you speak, if you stammer in between, that's also there. And your speech doesn't have to be really perfect. You just have to be speaking candidly, take definite pauses, and just keep it natural. But you need to practice a lot for this. At least I needed so. And how I did it was, there are many question sets available online which have different types of speaking tasks that are there on the actual TOEFL. So I asked my brother to time each of these, and I used to answer and ask him to rate how my answer was. So I think solving as many questions as you can will help with speaking. And for writing, I didn't prepare a lot, honestly. Uh, I just looked at some templates that are there on these different YouTube channels and some sample answers a day before. But like, I scored a 30 out of 30. But that being said, if your writing is really weak, you should time your answers, like write down timed answers to these different sample sets that are available. And one more thing is that although TOEFL requires doesn't require a very complex vocabulary. I had prepared for my vocabulary for GRE before, and I think I used the same set of vocab before. I just revised it once before my TOEFL, and I think using those words really helped. It's not just that you have to include deliberately complex words, but I think whenever it makes sense in the particular sentence, it's good to use your vocab. That will help you with a good score for writing. So yeah.
Yeah. Wow, guys, these tips are really going to help the future aspirants. So, how did you stay motivated during your preparation journey? Can you answer that?
So most applicants who apply to Ivy League or top 20 universities in the US, I'm specifically talking about US here, have an average score of around 105 to 108. So I'm talking about most of the applicants. That is a statistic. So if one is genuinely aiming for a top university admit, TOEFL score plays a very crucial role. So I think that itself is enough to stay motivated. If you want to get a very good admit, you need a good score because the others already have a good score. And moreover, in the entire MS application, getting a very good TOEFL score is the easiest thing to do to stand out.
Yeah, perfect.
Yeah. So I think whenever you're applying to a particular course to say a master's degree, you definitely have a dream university that has been the driving force for all this preparation and hard work you do, not just for TOEFL but for the entire application. And whenever these MS applications are evaluated, it's always a holistic process wherein they look at all parts of your application, like your CGPA, your work and research experience, and your TOEFL score. But that being said, your TOEFL score might help you to stand out. Most universities have a particular cutoff, and if you satisfy a score and if you're above the threshold, it doesn't really hurt your application. But again, that being said, like he said, that Ivy Leagues will prefer students with a higher TOEFL score, and that will make a difference in the end. So I think if you if you are aiming for a good university, that itself is the motivation of working on your TOEFL.
Awesome. So, one last question. Do you have any final tips for upcoming aspirants?
Uh, so the first very important thing is you have to revise some words. I mean, you can't just go there and expect to answer the entire paper flawlessly with a common, general conversational language because that is not sufficient. I've seen my friends, I've seen people who do that and then they don't understand meanings of few words and they lose out on simple marks. So it is important to revise words. One can curate their own list. The second point is when you're attempting a mock test at home, you have to do it in one setting itself. So what people forget to consider is that an aspirant's performance drops with time. So how you think in the first 10 minutes is very different from how you think in the last 10 minutes. So you must be used to sitting for 3 hours, 3.5 hours at a stretch and giving TOEFL at one go. That becomes very important. And the third thing is I would like to emphasize that TOEFL aspirants do not need to enroll for any additional classes or mock tests or whatsoever. There are abundant resources available on the internet for free, and there's a lot of guidance. And I'm sure this video will help them as well. So there's no need to spend, shed some money and actually enroll the classes, which will tell you and teach you the same thing which everyone is on the internet is doing. And one thing which this is not a tip per se, but this is something which people should remember. So when you purchase the TOEFL exam on the ETS official website, a candidate is allowed to choose 4 universities of his choice to send a TOEFL scores to for free. So if you send the TOEFL scores while applying, you'll have to pay a fee of around $20 to $25. But you get to choose 4 universities to which ETS will do it on your behalf while you actually purchase the examination. So it becomes very important to make if not final, a preliminary list of universities you'll be applying to. You can save around 80 to $100 in the process. And I've shared specific tips to each section like a few moments earlier. So these are the few tips from my end.
Yeah, so I think he covered most of it. Like So I'll just want to add that I've also seen people who over focus on the TOEFL or GRE preparation, and GRE has been waived by many universities, although TOEFL is a requirement for almost all. But I strongly feel that it's the whole application that gets you an admit and not just these scores. So I think it's very important that if you are uh, drafting your application, you're not giving a lot of time to preparation of these exams, because that will make you lose out on the time that you can instead spend on your research or other aspects of your profile. And one more thing is that usually say the universities look for 110 plus score, and one candidate has a 112 and other has 118. It doesn't really matter to them if it's 112 or 118, as long as it's 110 plus. So I think it's very important to keep this in mind before you start this entire TOEFL prep. It's just a cutoff score, and if all other parts of your application are really good, then it will not make a really big difference. So yeah.
Awesome tips. Okay, so that was our last question. If you guys have any question, you can feel free to ask in the comment section, and our speakers will be more than happy to answer all of them. Yeah. Let's see if we have any questions in the chat box.
Okay.
Yeah. We have one question. Uh, Shailesh is asking, how can students deal with test anxiety when taking the TOEFL exam, and what are some effective relaxation techniques and that can be used during the examination? So any one of you can go ahead with it.
Okay.
Anushka, would you like to go ahead with this?
Yeah, I can tell about this because I specifically have this problem of test anxiety, and like even though I know that it's not a very difficult exam, still this can happen because you have, since this entire process you have to sit for around 2.5 hours. You have paid for this test, and taking an attempt again is not the easiest thing that you can do. So I think before the exam, it's one thing which can definitely help you calm down your anxieties if you have given many mock tests before, because it's the exact same setting that you do at home, and that when you do good in that test, it's very likely that you will do good in the final test. And second is, I think after every session, after every section, what I did was I took 5 to 10 deep breaths, calmed myself down, and then I started with the next section, just to reduce the anxiety. And you also have that 10-minute break, which I think is very important, especially if you are very tensed. For me, what happened was, during my reading section, it was an experimental section, and that caused a lot of anxiety. So that's why during listening, that is after my reading, during listening, I was a little nervous, and I think that affected my score. But that's why usually it's easier to score in listening, but I still have 28. It's easy to get a 30 out of 30 in listening. It's pretty straightforward. But that 10-minute break, you can have a chocolate or biscuits or something, just take a walk around, drink some water, and calm yourself down so that you are again ready for the upcoming speaking section and the writing section. So these are some tips.
Really helpful. I must say this will answer the question. So next we have another question from it's Nobita. Yeah. So are there any effective study schedule or routines that you would like to recommend to students preparing for TOEFL on their own? Yeah. So important part is on their own. So go
So
ahead.
yeah, so again, yeah, if a candidate has limited preparation time, if it's swamped with other stuff, I think they can follow the actual preparation tactic or routine which I suggested, because I did it myself and I've tried it firsthand and it worked. I would like to emphasize that it is not specific to me as a person. It can help anyone who has a decent English colloquial skill.
Nice. Uh, Anushka, do you want to take that question?
So I didn't follow a particular study schedule or so. What I can recommend is that the first time that you start your preparation, just take a mock test. That itself gives tells you what you're good at and what you are not good at. So at that time you can estimate how much time it will take for you. So say in my mock test I scored 100 plus score, and my target is 110 plus. Then I can estimate how much time will be required and which sections I'll have to focus on, and then accordingly you can just so I don't think anyone who is preparing for an MSA or preparing for TOEFL has the entire day for TOEFL, and an entire day prep or say 6-7 hours prep is also not required. So you can just um, take 2 to 3 hours every day and work on those specific skills until the last day of your preparation. So that's from my side.
Yeah, great. Uh, and indeed, the analysis is most important part of preparation. That must help everyone. So we have Shailesh. Thank you for answering. Yeah, Shailesh, we are glad to answer you. Then we have another question. How important is it to have a strong vocabulary and speaking skills when taking the TOEFL? And what are some strategies to build one on your own? Nice
So
question, Bhavesh.
like
Yeah.
I've mentioned multiple times during this session, you don't need to have a very strong vocabulary. A normal vocabulary which you learn in your during a school or college is just good enough to actually get you a good score in TOEFL. Now coming to speaking per se, you don't need to have incredible speaking skills. If you can talk normally, what is important during speaking in TOEFL is A, you don't have to stammer. B, you have to complete your sentences. So they actually don't want a professional speaker per se. They just want to analyze if you can talk properly. And the topics which will be given are standard topics, which conversational topics or basically academic setting topics. So there's nothing out of the box. All you have to do is speak without stammering, speak clearly. You can also speak slowly if you want. That's not a problem. But complete your sentences. So if you can do that, you're good to go.
Okay, so
Awesome,
for
awesome.
vocabulary, I think there's a TOEFL vocabulary set available, and it's by Magoosh. So it has easy, medium, hard words. So if you're not very confident about your vocabulary, I think if you go once through these words, that will suffice, and you won't require any more preparation on the vocabulary. And as far as speaking skills go, I think even though you are a good speaker, you should practice topics once. Uh, you can try different topics, and I think TST Prep also has this entire sheet wherein they have different types of speaking questions depending on how the tasks are in the actual exam. So for example, if there's a question of personal asking your personal opinion, that say do you prefer online teaching or offline teaching, so you can just start with I prefer online teaching for two reasons, and don't make it sound robotic, because they I think this really matters, that the reasons that you give. So suppose you're giving two reasons, with every two reason you have to justify why, and I think that why should include uh, some example from your personal life. So say for example, I took this physics class and I really found that attending it live or doing the experiments helped me more rather than an online class. So that will help rather than just a straightforward technical answer. And if you are, say, stammering, I think while practicing, you can practice in a way such that you can be silent for that moment, take a pause, and then speak rather than just stammering, or um, that actually makes you sound that underconfident. So yeah, that's for speaking.
Okay, great advice. So we will wait for 2 to 3 minutes more. Let's see if we have some more questions.
Yeah.
Okay, guys, come on. If you have any question, feel free to ask now. We will be ending the session in 5 minutes. Okay, we have one more question from Bhavesh. That is, are there any specific tools and apps that you would like to recommend?
Okay, I can go first with this. Tools as such, by tools, like if you are looking for YouTube channels particularly, then there is Noteful Prep and TST Prep. TST Prep also has, for reading, writing, and speaking, they have different lists of questions. And for reading specifically, they have questions per type. So, say inference based, negative, factual, and summary based questions, and so on and so forth. That really helps if you do it question type wise. And apps, you can refer to Magoosh for the vocabulary. And I think, yeah, that's it.
From my end, vocabulary, you can use Barron's vocabulary. For practicing tests, you can use the one free mock test which ETS provides, and there's a website called Test Glider which provides up to 2 to 3 free mock tests and section-wise tests as well. So if you want to practice only one particular section, you can actually use that. It's very very helpful, and it simulates the environment of an actual test. So you don't need a physical timer. Everything will be done for you. So Test Glider really helped me a lot, and I would like to recommend that as well.
Yeah, and I'll also like to add, Greg Matt also has a really good writing section template. So, like I said, I didn't really prepare for writing, but I remember I went through his video of the template, and you don't have to be very strict to follow the template, but that actually helps you structure your essay. So you can look at a few videos from Greg Matt as well. And I think third party preps which are paid, I think you don't need to buy any of it. It's not absolutely necessary for TOEFL. So just look at whatever is free or whatever is officially provided by the ETS.
Awesome. So let's wait for 2 more minutes and then we can wrap the session. So guys, if you have any question, please put them in the chat section. Okay, so we have one more question from Shailesh here. So is TOEFL easier than LTS? So who will go ahead?
I mean, it's relative. I've known some people who find TOEFL easy, and I mean some other group of people who find LTS easy. So I would say the level is comparable. Just how they grade and the pattern of exam is totally different. And if someone is confused whether to give TOEFL or LTS, I would definitely recommend TOEFL because TOEFL is more widely accepted than LTS.
Yeah, so I've heard the other way around. I've like heard that IELTS is easier, and that's why a lot of people like to go for IELTS. But that being said, again, while I was applying to many universities particularly mentioned that they don't accept IELTS. So I think TOEFL is more widely accepted. So yeah.
Okay, really. So let's see if we have some more questions. Yeah, I guess that's it. So we'll end up the Q&A part here. So let's conclude now. So with this, if you have do not have any more questions, we will just wrap it now. In conclusion, I would like to thank all the speakers for joining us today and sharing their expertise. I'm sure you are watching, all those volunteers and all the audience watching today will have gained some valuable tips and insights from this session. And that's pretty much from this session. As we wrap this session, I would like to remind you that everyone that TOEFL is a challenging in itself, but it's a great opportunity to inculcate the self-discipline and management skills. I must say, to keep things practicing and never give up. I must say. So thank you all for joining today, and do subscribe to our scholarship track channel. We regularly post about various scholarships, internships, and fellowships. So hope to see you in the next session. So bye bye.
Thank you. Bye.
Yeah, thanks a lot. Bye.